I'd like to invite our panelists to the stage. The first panelist is Mr. John Mussington. Okay, he's on his way back. The next panelist we have is Arica Hill, who is director of the EAG. We have Miss Brenda Thomas Odlum in her contrasting colors outfit, the pink and green looking nice. And our last panelist is Miss Elesha George. So we would have just concluded a session about environmental advocacy, and I would have spoken about all the avenues using the ECCO agreement for environmental advocacy. But it would also be very interesting for me to hear, and for everybody else to hear, how different stakeholders are doing their own environmental advocacy. As we know, environmental advocacy should not look the same. And we have an NGO, we have a journalist, we have a civil service organization, and they're going to be telling us what their environmental advocacy looks like. So I'm going to start on my far left, putting Arica in the hot seat. Are you? Not really. You're in a safe space. No. No.
Okay. All right. Good afternoon, everybody. So I think Enika spoke about, how different organizations are doing different things. And I will start my notes on the fact that I think that if EAG was led by somebody else, advocacy would look different. And so I think the thing is that I recognize that I have my own biases, I have my own personality that goes into how I then encourage EAG to be an advocate. And I think that's important to understand because personalities matter. And so the things that, like for instance, when John is going to be here, there are things that he does that I don't have, like my personality is not going to do it. So I have found ways to advocate based on what my personality can manage, right? Okay, so I think that's a very important caveat, and I'm just putting it out there in the world. So the ways that EAG has, in the recent past, been an environmental advocate has been through, for one thing, ECCO. And I know that this may not automatically seem like an advocacy venture, but it is. How we have designed ECCO is to create safe spaces for environmental organizations. And we believe that if we speak together, if we have this kind of conversations together, then it strengthens us. It makes us feel like we're not alone, and we're not just yelling out into the atmosphere by ourselves, but there is community. So what we're trying for in this space is creating community. But we didn't only just kind of say, well, let's create community through conference, but we've also been going into the communities that are directly adjacent to our work. So, are you aware that EAG does not work everywhere in Antigua and Barbuda and Redonda? Well, I can't even say and Redonda because there's a whole of Redonda we on. But are you aware that we're not everywhere? Yes. Thank God you know this, because there are people who do not know this. So, to let you know, EAG works on the offshore islands within the Northeast Marine Management Area, and so that is specifically islands that are adjacent to the communities of Parham, Willacrees, Seatons, Glanvilles, Freetown. Okay, Adrian. So we work specifically in that area. We also work specifically on Redonda. there are no communities necessarily adjacent to Redonda, right? So because we know where we work, we then have said, recognizing that there are development pressures within the NEMA, that there are development pressures along that coast, what we have said is, when we've gone out to those communities before, what happens is that people only feel like you're coming to them to talk about your own issue. So if I'm only ever coming to talk to you about what bothers me, why should you want to join and be friends with me if you never speak to me when I have my own issues? Like nobody, that's like a one-sided relationship. And we're trying not to have toxic relationships, right? So our way of trying to deal with that is through a Jeff SGP funded project. We continued having engagements with community groups in Parham, Seatons, Glanvilles, and Willackeys. So what we did was we actually went out to them, we asked them questions about what environmental issues that they are facing, and then tried to link them with policy or government agencies that could assist them to address those specific issues. So for instance, one community identified that illegal dumping was the biggest issue that they had. So we helped them to have conversations with National Solid Waste Management Authority. We identified ways that they could not only tackle solid waste management, but also tackle the potential for people to continue the illegal dumping. So one of that ways was to put in cameras in the sites where there is significant illegal dumping. But we also realized that because of the issue that they were going to have, they didn't have the resources immediately in hand to do it. So they needed grant funding. So then what we said was, as a part of our program, we couldn't just say to you, identify the problem, here is the solution, and walk away. We then said, we then developed a proposal writing training for communities. So we went into those same communities, we offered 4 weeks of proposal writing training. And from that activity, one of those communities has since been able to access funding through the Jeff Small grants. So for us, our way of doing advocacy is to assist you at an organizational level. We recognize that it's not always possible to do all the many, many things. But for us, we know that, hey, one way that you can fix your problem is for you to, one, be able to identify it, secondly, be able to figure out who has all the resources and things that can help you, and then to be able to access international funding for it. So that's one way that we've done our advocacy. We've also done it through all of the training that you see EAG offering. I don't know if you've realized in the past maybe 3 or 4 years, we've really been putting on a lot of training. So people have learned how to identify birds. They've learned how to identify and patrol for sea turtles. They've learned how to do invasive species monitoring. None of that is just by chance. It is an active decision to help people to go out into the natural environment, because the more people are out, the more people engage with the natural environment, the more we believe that they will have a feeling of, oh, but this belongs to me. So if it belongs to me and you try to take it, I'ma fight you. Our feeling is, if we help people at that level, then you're also able to affect change in that way. So EAG, I think my team is probably like, boy, we always training people. And yes, we'll probably always be training people. We're always busy with people, because we believe once we give people the tools to do the work, then y'all can go and do whatever else happens thereafter. So that's EAG. Thank you.
Y'all hearing me? Yes. Okay, for those who don't know me, which I believe very few, as almost everybody in here should know me, I am Brenda Thomas Odlum, the former director of Community Development Division. So I had my experiences in the communities. I've since taken off that community government hat and put on a community CSO hat. So as I sit here today, I am representing IHO, which is the Integrated Health Outreach. Some persons might ask, what health outreach have to do with environment and advocacy? We promote health and wellness. And in order for you to be healthy and stay well, you must have a clean, vibrant environment. So you see the connection. Oh, y'all don't see it? I like response. Right. So we have been working with many communities in Antigua. We have had several projects. We had one for teenage mothers. We had one for abused children. We also sponsored the woman beekeepers. And we have a training that is coming up for gender that we'll be working with the gender department. Gender is not just male and female. There's a lot of things about gender that we have to put to the public, especially to a younger community. So we have been working on a wide range of projects, activities with various groups. But one of the projects that we've worked on recently that is close to what is happening here, and I will use that to give you the gaps and to give you the successes. And that is working with the NEMA, the Northeastern Marine Management Area. We have recently organized some sessions in Fiddes Creek, Barnsill. The first one was held there. The second one was in Parham. The third one was in Willikers. And the fourth one was in Freetown, because those are the communities on the border of the areas that comprise NEMA. And that is from, we call that area down there, right up to Smith's Point up at Mill Reef. So the communities on that area, we work with them in different aspects. One of the, well, I should say before I go into the gaps, what we do most is training, because we realize that you have to educate persons. If you don't educate persons and you carry a project into their community, they're not going to accept it. So you have to show them why it's important, the benefits that they can get, how they can help, how it can help them with their livelihood, and how it can help the nation as a whole. So we do education, several training, which is what I mentioned first. We also provide funding agencies for groups. While you're a registered group with the Community Development Division and the, what's that office on East of Stratford there, where you go and register, intellectual property. You must be registered with those two groups, organization, institution, in order to get a regional funding. The funding usually comes from Canada. Dr. Nicola Bird is the director of the board. We have a board. I am the president. So if there's any group in here who has any environmental projects, health projects, things that can create livelihood, land aggregation, I mean, you name it, because we can make it. I am also part of Jeff, and we just say when we're doing projects, we make it Jeffable. We will make it IOHable in terms of bringing it to the aspect where we can show why it's important for you to get that funding. But as I said before, you have to be registered with those two organizations. So training is key. Networking is very essential. We work with all the organizations that are in here and the ministries, environment, community development, agriculture, in terms of providing facilitators for the sessions that we are having. And we also do consultancy. We have a team of persons within our group who are qualified and certified, but if based on the subject area we don't have, we just contact another institution that have those consultants. So we work in unison, and that is very important because unity is strength. And if you do not network and participate with your other stakeholders when they're having their activities and have them participate with you, you can be in a group having a function and you're there alone. It's important for us to form that bond where we network and where we empower each other, because there's different sets of skills. Some have the academic skills, some have the technical skills, some just can do things with their hands. And when we have camp or we have training with children, I can just call any individual based on what the topic or the nature of the training is, and they never tell me no. So the communication, the networking, the camaraderie, it's important for us to be successful and for the projects to be sustainable. Because some persons go after a project because there's funding available. But when you start the project, you have to meet all the requirements that the project document did stipulate. And you have to be able to continue the project after the funding life would have finished. So it's important for us to get the buy-in from the community residents, from the groups that are there before, and from the young people. So networking, training, and the other key thing is feedback. We do have consultations. We do have town hall meetings. We do have a chat, because no sense of us going into a community because we see dirty, and I'm just using that, and we go in and clean it up. It might be there for a purpose. So we need to know why this is not done, and after hearing why, then we will show them why they should have done it and why it needs to be done. And after the consultation, it's important to see how you get both the residents of the community, the members of the group, and the government to work together. The positive things that come out of the training is that of empowerment. Many persons have been empowered from the various trainings that we have done, and we continue to do, because there's a training, as I said, that will start a 5 weeks training that is going to start in February. And you will hear more about it, but it's going to be 2 nights per evening for the 5 weeks. And that is basically on gender, with the gender affairs in the Ministry of Social Transformation. So having said that, I would also like persons to know that if you have an idea, because the empowerment helps you to think, there's an idea, there are persons who can help you to put that idea into a project. And we have persons who help to write the project documents so that it will be approved by the agencies, because each agencies have different requirements. So we don't want you and we don't allow you, because we don't want none of our projects to fail. And so far, since IHO have been there for about 6 years, I have been with them for the past 2.5 years. Since my retirement, they grab hold of me, and I'm there. So I've been working with them, and all the project proposals that we have submitted have passed. So we never have, because what we do the groundwork first before we send them off to the funding agency. So persons would have gotten the skill of how to write a project proposal, and whatever area or nature of the project, we have technical persons from the ministry that will come and assist you. So that's empowerment, and those are the positive aspects. The gaps now, yes, there are some gaps. And one of the major gaps, some discussion was around it this morning, but especially when we were working in the NEMA area October, November there, where we meet with the various groups, and we spoke to them about the ECCO agreement. Some knew about it, some were hearing about it for the first time. So we were able to educate them and have them work with us so that we can make a difference. But I'm telling you, my brother said that there was a elephant and something else in the hippo in here. Nothing is in here in comparison to what we had out in those community groups. Paramore is good. The thing was after. But when we went to Willikers, wow, they want to take us up to Ida. And they were saying, Miss Odlum, why is you the send? I said, I'm not here representing the government. And they were like, so there is a gap. I don't have to go into the full detail. There is a gap, there is a big gap, and we now need to work together to see how we can bridge that gap. Because I've been working with communities, as I said, well, I didn't say how much, but for 40 years, so don't look at me and judge my age, right? I went to the Ministry of Education straight from school, and I've been working with communities until I retired 2 years ago. I've come to the stages from Community Development Secretary, Community Development Field Officer, and I retired as the director. So I have a full feeling of what was said and what is happening. What is really on the paper and what we would like to see is not what is happening. So how can we move from there to have it happen? We explain to them now that the agreement and the, well, we use the, what it is, you mentioned it this morning, the, not the ECCO, the one from the environment, the environmental right. We were able to use the environmental protection bill and explain to them the years and the time to where we have arrived, and that is a stepping stone. So what we have asked them to do, especially those persons in that area, is to form a group. Those persons from the 3 areas that we had the training is to form a group, put some recommendation, give to Dr. Bird. We got few, and we are working with environment and the other agencies. So that's the first. The consultation, yes, I don't know if it's the time or how soon they got the information before the first consultation at environment, but the turnout was very few. Very, very few. I don't know if it's because of the turnout that they had, but we can't give up, and I can speak to what Martin Dudley said and Nurse Wang and all the others, because we have been working together. But yes, we are at a little better place. How do we step off from that place? What do we do to get where we want to go? So that is something for us to think about. Apart from those things, I think we are in a good place, and we have some persons who are very committed to community work. They are passionate for development, and as we usually say, it's not that we're against development, but we want the development to be in unison with the community so that both the funders and the person who resides there and those who are going to work can be happy. So having said that, I will close at this point and take questions after.
Test. It works. So I brought slides somewhere. I bought slides, but I did not factor in that I would have to hold a mic. I also brought notes on my phone, so I'm abandoning my notes, and that means you run the risk of me carrying on. Oh! Works too. Never mind about me carrying on. So goodie, for those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Elesha George. I am a journalist, the former supervisor, newsroom supervisor at Observer and social media manager. I now run an online website called Island Press Box, but before that, about a year and a half ago, I started an online website called Wadadli Unplugged, which focuses, again, strictly on environmental news, all things climate change, so that Antigua and Barbuda and the rest of the Eastern Caribbean can achieve or kind of monitor our goals or where we are in reaching the Sustainable Development Goals. So this is a picture of the Western Imperial, where's Martin? So the Special Economic Zone, the second Special Economic Zone, and Raul and a few members of the community gathered to protest, hey, not another Special Economic Zone. I mean, after we had Ida, we're like, come on, it didn't work, dudes. So next slide, please. So my reason for being here is to share with you what a journalist's role is in climate change and all things environmental. Journalists are powerful people. I'm sure everybody can agree. If you don't believe me, ask the Trump supporters that stormed the Capitol building, okay? We're powerful because we control the narrative of a society. If I say that Leroy over there is mischievous and he has something against the Antigua Barbuda Labour Party, and I carry that on radio and 10 people hear me, and they tell 20 more people, and they tell 50, and you know the story is going to change. You have to add on something to it. Next thing you know, he probably beat a woman somewhere, and everybody hates Leroy, right? Everybody hates Leroy. So journalists are very important. Again, we can either make peace, as in stopping a war, or we can cause a war. But I would like to believe that we are responsible and we're not going to start any wars. Right, so as I said, our role as journalists is advocacy and communication, because we are communication specialists. Now, what you're looking at here is a beach in Anegada BVI that was last year, July, where about 30 plus pilot whales, they died. Some of you probably didn't know that. And that's concerning, because that's just about 200 plus miles away from Antigua and Barbuda. But why didn't you know it? Nobody was talking about it. You may have told your sister, but that's probably as far as it went. She probably don't even know what the whales and them for did, and she don't know the purpose. So our purpose, I probably don't even need this. I'm going to ditch this. So our purpose as journalists is to tell the story. You can flip. So these are just some of the photos that were taken. That is one of the pilot whales stuck in a mangrove area, and you see there's scratches and all that. I don't think they ever released a report. Why, thank you. I don't think they ever released a report as to what happened there. So as I said, our role as journalists is to tell the story. That can happen in several ways. We could do podcasts. It's popular. Social media. We can do human interest stories. Sometimes people think, I don't want to say people think, I think for a very long time in Antigua and Barbuda, and by extension the Eastern Caribbean, the stories that we write as journalists are he say, she say, all right? You say something, this person responds. You don't walk away with anything. What have you learned from that? Nothing. And so people have sort of tuned out from the news, because I don't want to hear what you say. What does that have to do with me? What does that have to do with the price of rice? Cost of living is going up. I don't care what Harold tell Gaston, right? So what I'm trying to do with Wadadli Unplug and Island Press Box is to change the narrative, all right? Give more information, do a little bit more research. Unfortunately, when we try to do in-depth stories, we have to get information from the government. We need statistics. And I'm so sorry, I forgot your name. But she mentioned that there was an information commissioner, and I said, no, there's not. Because somebody was assigned as an information commissioner. And I will tell you how my last conversation went. I wanted some information from the Customs Department regarding something. Obviously, it's statistical data. I need to get it from the Customs Department. So, I called Mr. Hurst. I said, well, how do I get this thing? And he said, well, call Mr. Boudou, who is the Comptroller of Customs. I called Mr. Boudou. Mr. Boudou said, well, the information is there, but I can't give it to you. You should probably call the Information Commissioner. Okay, I called the Information Commissioner. She was overseas, tending to medical issues. She said she wouldn't be back till maybe about 2 weeks. I was okay, well, who do I speak to in the meantime? Because I can't wait on you. My story is not going to wait on you. The people wanting to know my story is not going to wait on you. And there was no one. And that was the end of the conversation. The story never happened. We never got the information. Nobody ever checks up. Nobody ever sees to see if there's a pulse. Nothing. And so what ends up happening a lot of times, and that's why the public is always mad at journalists, and especially observer journalists, because they like to say, oh, that's not what happened. They're just saying what they want. Guess what? We can only report a story from the people who speak to us. If I come to you, if there's a murder in your community, and I come, you live next door, because you know all the people in them business, and I come to you and I said, hi, my name is Elesha George, I'm a journalist. Do you mind speaking with me about what happened? I said, me, I don't want to be on TV. I don't want to be on radio. Okay, I go to the neighbor 5 blocks down. He has less information than you, but he's the only person who will speak to me. Guess whose story I'm writing? The person 5 blocks down, right? Now you turn around and you say to me, oh, you're just writing what you want. Well, I wasn't there. You were there and you didn't speak to me. I'm not writing what I want. I'm writing from the viewpoint of the person who spoke to me, right? So in order for journalists to be effective, I say all this to say this, in order for journalists to be effective, we need community participation as well. And Arica said something. She said, you cannot just go to people when you want something. And because of how small our newsrooms are in Antigua, in the Caribbean, it's very difficult to take time to know someone. What I like to do when I interview somebody for the first time is to interview them face to face. But that's not always possible. You know, sometimes you have a great idea in the newsroom and you think you may have 2-3 days, maybe a week to develop it. But the editor wants it in 4 hours. So what do? You take whatever research you can find, you Google, you call whomever will answer, and you write your story. Unfortunately, that does everybody a disservice. But people need to realize as well, journalism is a business. People love it, yes, but at the end of the day, you have to pay the people who work. So, unfortunately, that's a reality. So what you see here is a very beautiful picture of a mountain chicken. In 2019, I went to Dominica, because I am from Dominica, and I absolutely love nature, right? They are doing a mountain chicken program where they're trying to revive the mountain chicken because they are endangered. They became endangered after the 2017 hurricane season. Yay, climate change, right? And so they look for them at night. It was very fun, by the way. They tag them and they monitor them. So they monitor to see if they have this disease, which is called chytrid. So, you know, they get red and itchy and eventually they die. So, oh, by the way, just a note bien, this chicken was once our national dish, but unfortunately we had to abandon it and stick to callaloo because, you know, it's endangered. Now this picture right here, Rulia may recognize because he took it and I stole it. And this is mine. I didn't steal it, by the way, he did send it. He sent it to me for a story. So this is the sea urchin, and last year, mid-last year, really can correct me, mid-last year, there was this reoccurrence of a phenomenon that had happened several years back in Jamaica where the sea urchins, they were dying off, nobody knew why. And so we had this happening again. How many of you knew that? Oh my God, 10 people, yeah. So 12 people. So what I did was I interviewed Rulio, Odadley Unplugged, www.Odadley Unplugged, just shameless plug, that's where you can find it, about what was happening. And it was a different thing because, one, I said, well, I have to cater for different audiences. Some people don't like reading. I personally, if I read something past the first 2 sentences and, you know, it doesn't grip me, then bye. So I made a video. So what I do is I make videos, and then under the video, you find the article. If you want to read it, you read it. If you want to watch it, you watch it. Again, Potworks Dam. This is a thing. And I see all the faces of people who are surprised. This is what Potworks Dam looks like when it's dry. There are fish in the Potworks Dam. Pardon? So that's what they call it. Oh, I'm Sorry, that was a funny. I didn't get it, but now I do. So yeah, they are fish and they're dying. This is a recent picture of the Yida area. I did a documentary in October of 2020. And by the way, shame. I did a documentary on Yida almost 4 years after the project started and it was announced. And some of the questions that were on the documentary, oh my God, where is this happening? I'm sorry, what? Like, people literally did not know that that was happening. But what the documentary did is that it put things into perspective. So if you go on Facebook and you happen to find it, you will see it has about 185 shares and 40,000 direct views because people are watching. So it's never that people don't want to know, it's how the information comes across, again, where journalists come in. How many people know that there are monkeys in Antigua? Less than 12 people this time, making my point, right? So this one was found in Newfield. I think it was the beginning of 2022. No, it didn't escape from a zoo. They are actually out in the wild, and there are about 20 of them, and they're breeding. So this one was earlier, I think the same year in Bethesda, it was pregnant. Baby. So what they're doing, what the monkeys are doing, obviously, because they're out in the bushes, there's not much, doesn't rain, there's not much fruits, anything, so they're invading on farmlands. I spoke to some farmers in the Newfield area who stopped growing certain crops. Because, hey, why am I spending my money to grow these crops and then a monkey coming to eat it? I'm not making any money. Plus, they have to deal with things like predial larceny. That's a hard blow. You know, you take your last dollar, you invest it in your farm, and then you come up with nothing. So this is actually an ongoing project. I've been working on this for about 2 years. I want to get video footage for myself. So for the past 2 years, almost every Sunday, I stake out at Newfield, right, with a Zoom camera, hoping to get the photos myself. But these are very real photos of the monkeys, and they are invasive to Antigua. If you, Barbudas, I know some of you maybe have been to Barbudas, they're all over the place. We don't want that to happen here. We have enough problems. We don't want to fight with the monkeys for water, for God's sakes. Martin, so with the help of activists like Martin, he probably didn't even know I had this photo. Again, that was at C4. So with the help of activists like Martin, I can be a superhero. Rulio, your photo was here. I'm so sorry. I had Rulio on there. It probably didn't pick up. Rulio is also a hero. Just saying that. But journalists, I like to think of us as a bit of superheroes. It's, I like to say it's a thankless job, but I love it. Because sometimes it's damned if you do and damned if you don't. If I work with IHO today and I write a glowing story, and next thing I know, IHO's director steals some money offshore, I gotta have to write that story. You think they like me tomorrow? That's the risk we take. I don't mind. But in order for your stories to be told, every single one of you, because you have great stories, but nobody knows about it, including myself. There were a lot of eye-openers for me. I can't be everywhere all the time. And unfortunately, unlike places like Latin America, where you're gonna tell me your name this time. Anika said, you know, they would send freedom of information requests 100 times. I have all but 2 in me. You understand? I'm sending 2 requests. If I don't get it, I'm moving on because there are other things happening and I'm just one person. I would love to have a team. I would love to have a group. Any of you with children, cousins, sisters who love the environment and want to intern and want to be a part of something, hook me up. I need help, right? So journalists are doing our part in communication and advocacy to help our children, your children, my children. One of the things, because I've been to at least 2 of IHO's meeting, and Brenda spoke about an environmental consultation with low turnout. They have low turnout too. One, because people don't know it's happening. Secondly, people don't care because they don't know. In order for you to teach people, you have to reach them where they are. And who you're trying to reach are not necessarily the older folks, but the younger people who feel that they should have an investment, and they're not there. So one of the things I actually wanted to work with IHO and I haven't gotten it done, sorry, yet, is to put together a small team of young children. And so what we would do, even if it's once a month, we would do short videos. So they would go to the NEM. I know EAG, y'all do stuff like that. You'll bring children on the boats. Right. Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. So they do that. So what we want to do with that is to create a clubhouse. So it would be aired, for example, on Facebook every Saturday, one Saturday in the month. So it's something that children can watch. We want it to be something that can be shown in schools, because the children don't know what's going on around them. I have twin boys. They don't even leave the house. I send them outside and they say, Mommy, the sun too hot. So they don't know what's going on in NEMA. They don't know that the bee population is depleting. All they know, my throat sore, can I get some honey from the shop? And we have to change that. And in order to change that, work with me. Again, shameless plug. This, I put my number on there. Again, it didn't update. But for those of you who didn't get it earlier, 783-5801. So Island Press Box is more of the general news, where we're going to try to do more research pieces, like why all of a sudden there is no longer any Antigua Airways. You know, what's going on with that? And for Dudley Unplugged, we want to know, hey, how did monkeys get into our environment and now becoming an issue? How do we get rid of them? You guys can also check out, and my slide is gone, but you can also check out websites like CIJN, as well as MIC, which is the Media Institute for the Caribbean. What they try to do is to bring regional journalists together, because there are so little of us. They try to give everybody a platform to tell stories like these, environmental stories, investigative stories. And I know sometimes people call me an investigative reporter, but I like to say I'm barely scraping the surface, because there are so many things just in Antigua alone that we can capture that I would love. Again, shameless plug, I'm looking for interns. I can't pay, but you know, it's for a cause. Hook me up. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Elesha. We will now have a short, very short, unfortunately, presentation from Mr. Mussington. You would have remembered Mr. Mussington from this morning. He would have told us wonderful, wonderful stories about bees, and he would have alluded to some of the environmental advocacy that he has done thus far in Barbuda. So we'd like to invite Mr. Mussington to the stage.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to be short, and I hope I can excite some response and at least at the end of my presentation convince somebody to go down a particular route. Now, I was asked about advocacy and how does that fit into getting what needs to be done in terms of our circumstances, what has worked and why it has worked. Now, let me start by telling you a bit about my background. My background happened to be in science. And quite early, I was involved in terms of consultancy work, which has to do with getting up close and personal with the environment. Now, if you reach a stage where you understand and love what the environment is all about, and I hope everybody reaches to that stage, not to consider the environment as something other than who you are. Because the bottom line is the environment is you. And so when you hear environmental problems, the reality is it's problems for me, you, and everybody. So advocacy, in a sense, is self-preservation. What do you do in order to help yourself? Now, going down this road can be rewarding, but it can also be one which offers a lot of challenges, and at times you will be isolated with regards to figuring that the world is against you. Now, my training, postgraduate work, was in resource management and environmental studies. When I had to go back to school to sit down in those courses, I was basically shocked that one of the compulsory courses that you had to take was law. And I said, wait, I'm here to study about nature and environment. What does that have to do with law? But then I quickly realized that that is the foundation for everything. Because matters that affect you and you affect them, it all boils down to one thing: nuisance. And there's a law of nuisance, which means that your enjoyment, you have the right to enjoy your home, your surroundings, and anyone that interferes with that, then it can be considered a nuisance. And there's a whole branch of law which deals with those sorts of circumstances. So it's a foundation that you must rest on in terms of advocacy. The other thing I learned in that particular course was the question of speaking out, the question of writing letters, the question of agitating. When you see something, it means that it's affecting you, and you have to look at it from the point of view of a nuisance, and how do you get it to change? You can only get it to change if you, first of all, speak up. Secondly, you have the right, the luxury, the power to write letters. So, for example, most things that affect you in life is controlled by government. And some persons think that because you're just John Public, you have no right and nobody will study you. But that letter writing thing is a powerful thing. If Chief Town and Country Planner is not paying attention to the awful smell from my neighbor's backyard, and I speak, and he doesn't respond, then you put it in writing formally. And you write again. And you write again. Sometimes you do not get any response. You write again. Then in one of those letters you say, okay, you're not studying me. I'm going to go public, and there comes in the press. And I make the letter that I write public. So now everybody knows that I have a problem. I am addressing the person who may be responsible for getting something done with that problem, and that person isn't answering me. So that's the step you have to go down the road. It may take several attempts in terms of writing to get the attention of whoever, but at some point, you may need to take legal action, because the law of nuisance is all-encompassing. There are certain fundamental rights that you have as an individual. It's wonderful now that at this stage, the right to a clean and healthy environment is now considered as a universal human right. Okay, so that's another added benefit that you have. So once somebody is infringing on your right, you can now take legal action. And that's the next step. And in your legal challenge, in order to illustrate your position, those letters are going to come in handy. And it's not just letters from you personally. Those letters now have been made public. And so you have grounds to show that, look, this is a problem. This is how I've attempted to address it. And I have not received any response. I now have to take the legal action. And legal action is available to any and everybody. All right? We need to use the courts in terms of getting what we need done. The other aspect of advocacy that has worked for me, and today we're so lucky. Years gone by, for you to get any awareness out there of anybody looking at what you're doing and hearing what you're feeling, you have to go and write newspaper articles or letters to the editors. Nowadays, it's a dick. Facebook, everybody see. Instagram, WhatsApp. All these things are tools at your disposal now. And one thing that many persons will agree, nobody likes to feel ashamed. And if you're sitting as head of a department and you have an obligation to do something and everybody see that you're not doing a job, then that is more or less instigation for you to get up and act in it. So speaking up, writing, taking legal action, using social media. Those are the things that stand out. We have other tools at our disposal. Nowadays, you see the rubbish dump somewhere or somebody littering. You can always take a picture, and you can blow that up so well that you can name and shame and get your problems addressed. Now, advocacy comes with its downside in that you are up against, in many instances, governments and bureaucracies that they do not like little people messing with them. And sometimes things will be done against you in order for you to just shut up and go away. Now, you have to protect yourself against that. And one of the best protection you have is community. Letting other persons know what is going on. Building awareness as to what is happening. In some countries, this kickback from governments and big corporations takes the form of persons losing their lives. And that is why the ECCO agreement now is such a good thing if it can be made to work properly, in that it recognizes your legal rights to protection when you speak out against problems. Because at the end of the day, quite often, many of the problems that we face with regards to environmental abuse comes from big corporations, big money, persons who only see billions of dollars at the end of the day. And you, little person who wants to prevent persons from getting those big monies, you become a problem. And when you become a problem, persons go the distance in some instances to hush you up, and it can get physical, and it can end in your life going somewhere else. Now, okay, so, yes. And so, for us, we are not there yet, but it's not a stretch of the imagination that we would not get there. The only defense we have under those circumstances is to shine the light of the public as to what is going on. Do not remain quiet. Spread the awareness in terms of what you're going through as far and wide as possible. And at the end of the day, stick to it. Because you must realize that you are part of the environment, I am part of the environment. Anything that's going to be affected, no, it will eventually affect me. And when we work together, one voice may be ignored, but thousands of voices, you just cannot ignore that. So let me stop there in terms of my journey and the experiences going through. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mussington, and thank you to all of our panelists. Did you all hear the running theme from all the panelists? Community, stick-to-itiveness, working together, intersectionality. You know, you scratch your back, you scratch my back, I scratch your back. That was something that was a running thread that was common through all of the panelists. They all spoke about the need to come to people and, you know, don't just take from them, but you also have to have something to give in order to get environmental advocacy to work. I think we can open up the floor for some questions. Do we have any questions from the audience? We're going to do Nurse Wong first. She first put up a hand.
Thank you very much, Ms. Nicholas, and thank you to the panelists. Mr. Mussington, earlier today you spoke about the concept of in good standing. I'll be very grateful if you can expand a little more on that for us. In Guyana, there was a recent challenge, and the citizens won the challenge about the oil spill and Exxon and all the rest of it. Those persons were, based on what I read, in the nearby environment, so they were being directly affected. But I've also known of other successful cases where persons were not living in the environment but could have proven how they would have been affected. So if you could expand a little on good standing for us, I'll appreciate it greatly.
Okay. The legal minds would tell you it's locus standi. Okay. In other words, whether or not you have standing. So the concept behind it is this. I don't live in Fitch's Creek. There's a nice, beautiful house up there. And there is someone apparently going up and marking with a crayon on the wall. If I jump up and say, stop marking on that wall, I'm going to carry you to court to stop you from marking on the wall. The judge might tell me, what business is that of yours? You don't have any interest there, so why are you concerning yourself about that? Now, in the context of environmental matters, what we've often ran into in Antigua and Barbuda, and I think it started with the Dato Tan affair, where one individual took the government to court with regards to that development. He lost on that question of locus standi, because what the court is telling him, you don't own anything there. It's not your concern. You're not affected or impacted by it. So who are you to be bringing an action there? The difference now in terms of our fight now is that when you're dealing with matters of the environment, I may not live in that nice house up there, but it may just be that the crayon which that person is marking contains lead or some other noxious substance, and when the rain comes and it washes it on into the ground, it goes down into the gutter, comes down to the pond or waterway or the beach where I swim 10 miles away, and it poisons me. And so that's the concept we have to understand in terms of how things affect us in the environment. It might not be a direct effect, but the fact that we are part of an ecosystem, we are all interrelated, these mushroom effects will eventually impact you. And that's why how we look at the climate crisis, for example, it's a global issue, because what you do somewhere else or what you do locally will mushroom and affect everyone else. And that's how the concept of locus standi, governments try to use it to hush us up. But we need to get beyond that and prove the connectedness and how things impact and mushroom and the domino effect. Okay?
Good afternoon. I want to try to talk to the panel, but especially yourself. Is there a code of ethics in dealing with advocacy in action, especially when dealing with stakeholders like partners? And I'll give an example. My group made a presentation at a function a couple months back. Also, there was another well-known group, and the leader attempted to discredit the work of my organization based on our focus, and literally try to shame us in representing the issue, which is the issue of climate change and the impact it has on people with disabilities. But the person thought that we should not have raised that issue because we're always showing the negative. And that came out to be very harsh, and we asked ourselves, will we ever partner with that group again? Can that group call us to be a part of anything again? Is there a cutoff or an ethic when we're dealing with advocacy in action, especially when, you know, your partner is here fighting for their lives, and you're shaming them for doing that at a point that you figure that they shouldn't? So I would like to know whether it's in writing or in video, when enough is enough, especially when talking about your partner, your stakeholder, that you could, you know, sit down with. And that's something I would like to know, because we felt at that time that our issue and the impact on climate change has on life of people with disabilities is something relevant to us. But that stakeholder believed that it shouldn't came out and downplay it in a very disrespectful manner, and we decided we'll never work with that group again. Can call us, we will never work with that group again, because that group disregard the vulnerability of our community, even though all of us are blowing the same trumpet, saying the same thing. And so I would like to know when enough is enough, or if there's a code of ethics that all of us should follow when dealing with the issues, especially when the issue concerns the stakeholders that you call on to work with on a, you know, continuous basis. I would like to know that.
Well, for me, I would say that bottom line, you have to recognize that you're part of a community and different organizations. For you to achieve something, you have to cooperate and work with other organizations. And the ethic will simply be to bear in mind that realization that interdependency is there, and you support me even though it might not affect you directly, but your support in terms of the overall good, and that's the ethical thing behind it. Not because you don't have personal interests or your group is not concerned about that, but the other group is, it's support. I don't know what the other panelists may think of that, but that's my feelings in it.
I've been there, Bernard, where you're working along with an organization and you don't necessarily, your thoughts don't necessarily align. I think that there are multiple ways to do that. I think that's how you kind of manage relationships anyway. I don't personally believe in cutting off people without explaining or having a conversation first. I think that very often we don't speak and we don't explain in private what our issues are. Sometimes we use public fora to kind of just, well, I'm gonna tell you now, wow. And you tell them where they mother find them, and when you finish, you can't walk it back, right? I personally, I have always been the person I will hear you, I might be very upset about it, but then what we've done is we'll have a meeting with you in private, have a conversation. Can we agree to disagree but still work together? If the person persists, I think then you can say, well, respectfully, let us part ways. But I don't think that at the very first instance I don't believe that your first instance should be goodbye. I think that you must be able to find community, but have the conversation in private, not with multiple people watching you and hearing you, because that is when people become more defensive.
Great. So I just want to say, from the point of a journalist, sometimes you have to find a different strategy outside of cutting out people, because you may need them in the future. So I'll give you an example. The Department of Environment had consultations to build the bridge at Cashew Hill, right, to prevent flooding during trough systems, or just times where it rains a lot, rare occasions where it rains a lot. And that's an okay story, right? You just, hey, they built a bridge over there. But what I did instead was, there was a man who lived directly next to the bridge. I was talking to him, I did a video. He walked me through his house and he said, hey, the last time there was a trough system, this is what happened to me. And so we walked outside, he showed me what was flooded, what he could do, People respond better when they see it for themselves, which is why I always say doing human interest stories, it's better than just writing something that happened. So if that didn't work out for you, I would have suggested that if you have a friend or a co-worker who was directly impacted by climate change, whether the sun was too hot, whether they live in an area where there's a sinkhole and it was caused by XYZ, you could tell that story instead. People will relate better, and then again you have a community on your side, so the next time you go to that organization and you say, hey, well, we want to talk about that because it affects us, you have a backing of people who say, well, didn't you see the video, or didn't you read the article where XYZ happened to that person?
My quick response to is that in all groups and all organizations, you're going to find persons with personality issues, and what we need to do is to think of the bigger picture. Think of the vulnerable persons, think of the development, think of how we can help them, and find a common ground where, and as one person say in private, yes, because people tend to get offended. It's like an insult, because you could have called me and tell me X, Y, Z instead of shouting. And when you're dealing with vulnerable persons who already have a situation, you have to be not using a knitted glove, but caring, humility, so that you can be of some sort of assistance to the group and everybody will come out win-win.
My question is for Ms. Odlum. I hear training at IHO. I hear 80 women beekeeping. My first question, where are they today? My second question is, in terms of collaboration, I hear we have beekeeping in Barbuda, training was done there. God Center does quite a bit of training to include creating a manual for our beekeeping courses. Where are the women today? Any businesses were developed from those beekeeping training that were received? You know, did they receive anything that we would call it startup kits? And how do you map where they are to see whether or not a participant sold the kit and not really, you know, use the kit for the purpose intended?
Okay, very
Thank
good
you.
questions. Yes, they are still functioning. They have formed themselves a woman cooperative. They work closely with the men. He had to leave, but he will be able to, what is his name? Brent, Mr. Georges, yes. Brent has been working with, because they had a very active one before, and he's the one who is monitoring that particular one. Yes, they got seed money, yes, they made products, and they're continuing, and the next step for them is to train some young girls, because, they are, the funding based on where it came from is specifically for women, and continuously the women have to train girls. So 1 or 2 dropped out, but it was more, we got more application than we could. We got about 90-something application, and there was only funding for about 50 plus. So yes, the mother care program, we were able to train them to be good mothers, to put them in areas where they could work, because some of them were persons who were illiterate. Well, yes, it was. They were illiterate. So we had to get them into private classes. We had big mothers, young, but they couldn't read and write. And we realized that that was an issue, and we were able to put some in jobs. All did not continue because about 2 or 3 of them on their 3rd babies, but we didn't get all, but we got some. And they have been doing some of the different, I think one of them, not calling name because we don't do that, were referred to one of the GAD program. So we continue to monitor them. We don't get all, but we got most of it. What was the other part of? Mm-hmm.
It was God Center who was conducting the training. And I actually reached out to Dr. Bird
Mm-hmm.
to ask her, you know, is there any way some of the women we know can benefit from the program be able to register? She said yes, initially, because when she was actually approaching the donor for the opportunity, I recall receiving a phone call asking to reference this person. So when we actually reached out to send a list, we never got a response back, you know, and there were women who wanted to participate. So I speak about collaboration between partners who are in a relationship, because I heard that yesterday and today. And, you know, I mean, how do you bring partners and beneficiaries from organizations so they also benefit from other opportunities that are of the same common, let me say, intent, let's put it that way.
Okay, you're correct, but the fact is, it was Mr. Brent and Sylvanita Joseph. We got them because they were already in bee training, so they were the one who run that program. Whatever name came to us, some names came to me and I just send them to them. We only seek for the funding and seek for the packages and we had to prepare for their graduation and things of that nature. But we did not have anything per se. We sourced the fund. The Beekeepers Association was the one who dealt with it. Agriculture assisted in terms of some, I'm not sure whether it's financial or sending lecturers. But apart from being there, having observed some of the interviews, I only went back once to see them in action, and I went to deliver the certificates. So it was not us. And I want to believe that because Dr. Bird is very prompt, she may have been receiving so many applications, knowing that there was a cutoff point. So I'm not saying that they should not have responded, but that could have been it, because she had planned to see if she could get a second phase of funding, since that was so highly required so much, so to speak. Oh, 6. Thank you, because I didn't get that feedback. Thanks. Thanks. Mm-hmm. But we do have somebody who take all this information, because, as Anika said, advocacy and how we were able to be so successful in getting all these funding. We had to do documentaries, pictures, start to finish, registration, them in action, different things, and a story to send to the funders. So everything that we do, sometimes person may figure, oh, you're always in the news, you love on TV, but you have to sell what you're doing. And this is how you get the buy-in, both from the community residents and from the other stakeholders.
Thank you for underscoring the importance of building and maintaining community. We have time for one single question. So Ruli, you'll make this a very good question. We have to wrap up the session. Very much pressure.
This is a question for the entire panel. Considering the room and the young people and the potentially new advocates that you have in the room, what advice would you give, considering the things that you guys have gone through with your advocacy as it relates to environmental issues, to encourage us in pursuing this advocacy, and keeping in mind that there can be negative kickbacks from some of this advocacy, especially if you're looking at career and that kind of thing. There are potential implications. And I think as a panel, there's a wide variety of experience here. So this is a question to the entire panel. What kind of advice would you give to young or new advocates?
Don't all jump at once. Let's start from the left. Let's start with Arica.
Okay, so in one sentence,
yes, in one
I
sentence.
say that EAG has a discipline of hope. So our thing is that while we recognize that, yes, there are things that don't go well, we also recognize that there are things that go very well. Focus on the things that go well. It's okay if things don't go perfectly, but feel accomplished in the good things that you've done and allow for yourself to get better in the things that didn't go as well. That's all I can offer.
Perseverance, don't give up.
Short and sweet.
If you want a career in journalism, I would say weigh the options. If you are okay being silent on issues that affect everyone, including your family, then, I mean, it's not the career for you. But if you want to give a voice to people who are voiceless, but who need to be heard, then journalism is for you.
My advice is this. If you prefer, and I don't see how anyone could prefer to spend the rest of their lives sitting at a desk, not seeing sunshine, smelling fresh breezes, not getting new experiences about plants, animals, places, that sort of thing. In other words, living. If you want to live and live close to nature and enjoy yourself and be healthy, then go for advocacy and trying to help to protect you as the environment. That's my advice.
Let's give a big round of applause to our panel for giving us some thoughts to chew on. I'd now like to pass the mic back to the real master of ceremonies, Shano, or Arica.
I should have passed it on to Shana, for real. She behind it, she done. All right. So we are long past our time. It's 3:15. I want to say thank you to all of you for coming out to ECCO 2023. I think it has been great. I'm not going to ask you to say a round of applause as yet. The last thing that we had hoped to have as a part of our session was what happens next. I think we've had a really great conversations over the past 2 days, but I don't want the next time that I see you is next year, January. Okay? I don't think that makes any sense. If we're going to have a relationship with one another, I can't see you once a year. What is that? That's no, but I don't want to have a long distance relationship, Miss Wang. Okay? I don't want that. I want to be close to you. So how can we continue this relationship? And just spitball some 2 ideas, 3 ideas, and then we'll take it and we'll agree to those and we'll move on. Martin has one. You can't have it without a mic.
Something small like a WhatsApp group on the various subjects like advocacy, because it covers a lot of things, and a meetup once every 2 months, 4 weeks. I don't know.
Okay,
informal.
so WhatsApp group or we can meet up every 2 months, okay, to keep ourselves together. Combine the two together, WhatsApp group and meeting often. Okay, Rafika, you have to wait for the mic, please.
Climate Action Team, Antigua, Barbuda.
Right, so there's a climate action team that was formed last January. There are only a few people who continued on with that team. I think we have 6 or 7 members. 6 or 7? Agencies. So if you are interested in signing up for the climate action team, please speak with Rafika. This is one way that we can find a way to work together through partnership. One other idea, anybody in the room? Yes, Miss Odlum, you have to wait for the mic.
The next consultation that will be at environment. I would like to see almost everybody in here at that consultation, because it's taking it to another level. This is where we're going to discuss the next step from the ECCO Zoo, and then we will take it from there instead of coming back another workshop and whatever. We need your input in those consultations.
All right, great. So far 3 things. The last thing from Bernard. So the first one was a WhatsApp group and meet every 2 months. Second one was climate action team. Third one was join IHO for their consultation that will happen at the Department of Environment at a date that they will let us know outside. Yes.
Yes, I like the idea of the WhatsApp group because the ABAPD has.
Is it a full suggestion? He has 2 seconds.
Okay, the ABAPD has a running project sponsored by the Jeff Small Gun program, and we could do with some volunteers up there to come and help us. So if you want to connect, come and see us.
So we have some field trips. We have a field trip too.
No, we don't want a field trip now. We
you
want people
volunteer.
to come and work on the site and help us, because many of our people are challenged, and we can teach a lot about environmental issues. We have all sorts of insect, bees, up there that is just flourishing because of our natural. We don't use chemical.
Okay, so great. So we have. Thank you. So we have. Opportunity to volunteer with organizations. If you are interested in volunteerism, then find Bernard so you can sign up with him. Everybody may not do it. Find at least 2 people who can volunteer with you. And if you're offering training, there's also the potential to join up with Sweets Village Uncovered to go on their field trip. Youth Today has options for them to share with young people. They actually do a really amazing job on social media So whenever you're thinking about you need volunteers, you need people to kind of jump onto your programs, talk to youth today. They're going to wave their hands right now so that you see who they are, and you're going to make sure you're going to talk to them. So great. I think that the idea that Martin and Rafika had is kind of this almost the same thing, the whole idea of meeting together more often. I don't know if we can really do it every 2 months. Can we say that we can meet twice a year? And it's not going to be on EAG's dime. I can assure you that these past 2 days are expensive. All right? So we've had to raise funding for this. I'm sure we can all find a common place to meet. We live at the Museum of Antigua and Barbuda. That is where our office presently is. Pray God that we will eventually be able to go somewhere else. But until that time, the gallery is available and we may meet there. So, are those ideas agreeable to all? So we're also going to jump on top of youth today and their option for getting some volunteers from young people, because we want young people involved, right? Excellent. All right. Thank you for being here today. And I just want to remind you that ECCO does kind of continue tomorrow. Tomorrow we have our Green Job Symposium. It's going to be on YouTube. So it's not for you here. I'm sorry, guys. You're going to watch it online. Go online, go on the Environmental Awareness Group Antigua on our YouTube channel. You'll get to watch it streaming online from 10:30 to 11:30. We have 8 experts from different fields within the environment, different careers within the environmental field who'll be speaking to young people. We have young people who'll be in person, young people who'll be on YouTube, so just watch. And for those of you who have not registered for ECCO Connect, tomorrow evening is our cocktail. Trust me, if you don't register, I cannot cover you. So please make sure that you are registered for tomorrow's cocktail. It starts at 7 right here. You don't have to be full on dan, but look cute. And come and have a great time. I want to end today. Oh, yes, Miss Odlum. Yes, so if you didn't register at all, I counted my registration now. No, if you registered already, you're good. Don't show up tomorrow if you did not register, is what I'm saying. Okay, because as NGOs and CSOs, we know these things cost. Right. All right. I want to say thank you again to all of our sponsors, to the British High Commission, to the OECS Biospace Project, the Department of Environment, to the WISE Foundation, and for general support from Jeff Small Grants Program. We're very appreciative to them because without all of them, this does not happen. And this is how I want to end today. Do you all know that song from church, Won't You Greet Somebody in Jesus' Name? Won't you tell them that you love them in Jesus' name? And you go wrong and you give people a hug? Can we do that as our goodbye? All right, so we're going to...
Won't you greet somebody in Jesus' name?
Hold on, shut up. And
yes,
remember that the clinic continues for those of you who have registered.
Where Freetown go?
So, Dana, start it up.
Well, how the church music starts and Freetown and left.
And you know, Freetown probably sing their Sankey. Right?
Won't you greet somebody in Jesus' name?
Won't you tell them that you love them in Jesus' name?
Tell them we can work together in ECCO's name. Everybody smile. We love ECCO. Everybody smile. We love ECCO. Won't you greet somebody with partnership? Won't you tell them that you love them in partnership? Tell them we can work together and collaborate. Everybody smile. We love ECCO. Everybody smile. We love ECCO. And I also want to say something else. I want to big up everybody at Casa Palmadita for being such an amazing host. Thank you. Big up to the staff. Carlisle gone home. But big up to Miss Shepherd and all of the team for taking such a night. I'm sure y'all like the venue and the food. So we have to big up them, big up Chazo Media, because they've been streaming and dealing with that. And of course, big up Kabu Brand. Y'all have been getting, big up our photographer. We will be sharing those photos. So please make sure to look out for them. So big up to all of our service providers. Big up to the EAG staff. Big up everybody for coming, and we appreciate you. Chaz, you can take it away with the music.